How are things going on your end?
I mean, so far so good. I think it's been a weird summer for sure. I was hoping that it's because everyone is heads down building for on-chain summer. Um, but I'm not really sure if that's what's going on. I feel like when the market's down, vibes are always down. And, there's a lot of like crazy things just going on in the world. And I can't tell how much of that is just affecting people's thought process and like what they're doing and how they're feeling, and if that's kind of creeping into Farcaster, or if it's just the normal summer slump because people are out doing real life things, real life conferences, enjoying the weather. So it's kind of weird.
Yeah. I mean, I just got back from ECC, and it's been a ride just getting situated from that travel. But I agree. I feel like there was a moment where there was a lot of excitement, a lot of buzz. Scene coins, I think, obviously being a big part of that. But yeah, I feel like usually vibes do drop a little bit when the market corrects, or however you want to frame what's happening in the market right now. I think it does have some effect to it. But there are probably some other global issues that people are paying attention to that might be causing some of the, I don't know, glum or what is that, dread and doom feelings.
Yeah, the existential dread kind of underlines all facets of life right now. No, it's weird because I think for Farcaster in particular, especially if you use Warpcast as your main client, they've made a lot of improvements over the last few weeks, and they've been working really, really hard on the spam problem. And the biggest change I see is like the AI copy pasta bots, especially the ones that like summarize things people say or reply with some like clearly chat GPT instant generated text within 3 or 4 seconds of posting. A lot of that has been automatically marked as spam and gone away. And once you're marked as spam, you no longer show up in the metrics. So I wonder if a lot of people are looking at their engagement from like May and saying, wow, I was doing really well and now I'm doing really poorly. And it's not that. It's just that you're not seeing the bots in your metrics. And so I think a lot of people assume like engagement's down, but I don't know if that's true as much as you're starting to see only metrics around real engagement and real people, and no longer maybe this artificially inflated metrics that were coming from a lot of those, automated responses that are clearly not real people authentically engaging with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's definitely a good starting point. And then also, before we get too far in, I just want to GM everybody who's in the audience. Know your system is not acting up, will not be turning on their camera, and we love that. We're going to jump in just to set the stage here. Pichi and I have been talking about the creator stack, creator economy for some time, and we're in several group chats together. Pichi is, I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit better, but I think one thing that I recognize you for is for being this like super host of channels. Like you have you moderate or host or own, whatever you want to call it, several channels, and you've done a tremendous job at integrating a lot of the different on-chain media tools to these channels to create community, to monetize, but also to distribute value back to those who are creating value on these channels. You're very thoughtful about the different tools that exist and how you use them. So I definitely, when I had the opportunity to think about like what can we talk about on a regular basis, and who do I want to have this conversation with, I can only think of you. So if you wanted to, definitely give a little bit bigger intro. It looks like on Unlonely we have a nice little crowd building there. We'll be following your comments there. If you have any questions, post them there. We'll definitely bring them up to the stage. But anything, I mean, how would you describe yourself, Pichi?
So happy that would have been coming up on 6 months of Farcaster. I joined literally days before frames dropped. So it's been kind of drinking from the fire hose for me because I think if I had joined a year ago, I'd probably have a very different experience. But I joined right as things were ratcheting up fast and furious, and hundreds of thousands of people were joining the platform in a short time. So it's been like fascinating and crazy, and I never imagined I would kind of be in this place because I think I'm known sometimes on Farcaster as an artist, and I would not have called myself an artist a year ago because my art never left my phone. I used it mostly to make silly like memes and art for my friends and some stuff for different, friend groups for birthdays and things like that. I would make people art, but it was always very personal and very small. The thought of selling my art and becoming an NFT artist, if you'd asked me this a year ago, I would have just laughed. And now, because of Farcaster, I feel like I've been able to kind of reinvent myself and, come onto this platform and lean in very heavily because I'm still excited about it. I think we could talk all day about the problems with the ecosystem and things that go wrong. But a lot of times, if you think about what could go right, this has so much potential, and it's so fascinating to watch what could really happen if we as creators can take back the web and go back to the beginning of the internet when it was open and free and easy and anybody could put up a website and no one could take it down, and people were just exploring and getting creative and putting themselves out there wholeheartedly. And then kind of Web 2 came around, and now we're seeing, censorship and all this different stuff. And that's why I originally came to Farcaster. In real life, I do a lot of cannabis work, and we're constantly censored on social media because unfortunately, cannabis is still federally illegal and on Schedule 1 as a drug with no medicinal value, which is hilarious. But it makes it difficult to talk about it when their lawyers interpret that to mean you can't talk about it, right? And I'm sharing papers from Nature, I'm sharing scientific journals, I'm not selling, weed on the internet here, and I'm still getting deplatformed as if I'm a literal drug dealer. And that was very, very frustrating. So Farcaster was really appealing to me, and I originally intended to come here and talk about cannabis, and things just kind of went in a different direction. And I just get really excited about what's being built here because I think it's finally the stars are aligning for the creator economy to really take off. Like we've been promised a lot of this for a very long time. But I think until Base came along, it was really, really difficult. I never would have put a collection online if it wasn't for Base, because the thought of spending thousands of dollars as an unknown artist to just see if people like your art and buy it was terrifying. So even though I was a big NFT collector and I enjoyed it, I never imagined myself doing it because the sunk cost, if you fail, was so huge. But I think when I put up my first collection on Base, this is when Base was, quote, expensive. It cost me maybe $30 to mint 888 pieces. And that's just unheard of on layer one, right? And now I could put that same collection up for probably 35 cents. And just thinking that in 4 months, the cost has been reduced that far is amazing for creators. Like you can take chances now that you could not take even 6 or 7 months ago. And for me, that's what's the most exciting. And that's why I'm still here.
Yeah, that's rad. I feel like I knew a lot of that, but I hadn't thought about it in some time because of the effort or this like push that you've been doing in the creator space. Also interesting to think or to hear that you wouldn't have called yourself a creator or an artist previously, and that Base facilitated part of that journey in terms of your creator persona on chain. So that's really interesting. I wonder maybe we can and before we started recording, I did tell Pichi is like let's keep it spicy. So we're going to be talking about a lot of different products here. The goal of this space here is to introduce to those of you who are unfamiliar with kind of the creator stack that's being built around Farcaster. Firstly, outside of it, of course, but at least I think for Peachy and I, the Farcaster ecosystem is something that we've been very strongly considering and researching and implementing in all of our projects. So I want to use this space to introduce a lot of the different products that are being used, but also maybe offer some fair critique of how we can improve some of these products, right? Because they're not perfect. I have a few that I've been talking about a lot recently. And in fact, there's some feature initiatives that I'm considering together with the Cryptosapiens community to develop. And all of these things have been happening organically in terms of the conversations that we're having as a community and seeing where the need is in terms of like those who are subscribing to Cryptosapiens and are part of our private channels are showing up to our social club meets. And one of those products is Hypersub. So maybe we can start there and we can then continue. Obviously, I want to talk about Unlonely because we're on Unlonely today. And I have words, good words. I see Grace in the audience, GM. So let's talk about Hypersub. I know that you personally are using Hypersub, I would say a lot, across all of your channels. What is it that attracted you about Hypersub firstly? And then what are some of the things that you really enjoy using? And what are maybe some of the things that you feel are lacking?
Oh, that's a loaded question. So I'll start with I did a Hypersub as an artist because I realized I was spending a lot of time like self-promoting my art every day, trying to get, mints and things like that. It was just taking up a lot of time and effort. And I thought maybe I could pivot to Hypersub. I tried Alpha Friends. It didn't really work for me as an artist. It was hard to pull like who are your subscribers, who is still subscribed, and it felt like Hypersub made that very clear. So I've been a user of it since I joined because it popped up on my feed pretty quickly early in my Farcaster days. I saw people getting really creative. I joined a Hypersub called Perps Growth Tank, where he was kind of like a mini hedge fund manager, and he was going to be doing a lot of investing and LPing and things that made no sense to me of how to make money off of crypto. And I said, well, I'm just going to let someone else do this for me and be part of it. So I thought that was interesting that you could use it that way. I saw writers using it. I saw some using it after his Outcast project. So I decided to jump in, try that out, and say maybe I could just focus on a few art pieces a month instead of trying to create art every day and see if that worked. And I've been really happy with it. But on my first drop, I definitely foobarred it and really messed it up not realizing it because I thought I could just figure it out and read the docs and I would understand it. But I knew I needed to create the mint on Zora, and I did. And then I just airdropped it to everybody who I pulled from Hypersub because I exported a list. And then I realized once I connected the drop to Hypersub that I should have pressed a button there and it would have airdropped it to everyone. And so I think I kind of did it manually, but definitely messed it up a bit. And it was not really intuitive. And I didn't find any like really great documentation on how to do those drops, like step by step or a video. And when I moved over to version 2, I definitely messed some of that up as well because I thought I set these creator splits, especially for my channel Hypersubs correctly, where it would go to the channel wallet, and it did not. It just all went to me. I had to do the math and then resend it to the wallet. And of course, everything's on chain so people can check me, but it was still a thing where I thought I set it up right. And I watched a couple videos of other people like the memes channel who was using it as a gate. And I realized I did not set it up correctly. And then the whole version 2 just confused me. And having a subscriber dashboard, since I subscribe to about 10 or 15 Hypersubs, but then I also have a creator dashboard and they're mixed together in one product, is actually a real mind bender for me. And it's hard sometimes to kind of navigate between the two. So I wish it was a little bit easier. I would almost tell people have two accounts, have your account you subscribe with and your account you create with, because mixing them together can add a little bit of frustration. And I would do the same thing for my channels. If I was going to set up another Hypersub, I would do it with another wallet, do it completely separate so that I'm not accidentally mixing money and, looking sketchy to my subscribers. Like, it wasn't my intention. I just did it wrong. And I'm like, well, whatever. It's on the blockchain. Everybody can see I put the money back and tried my best.
I mean, yeah. And at the end of the day, honestly, we're all kind of testing this in public, right? And the one thing I've kind of always committed to is to experimenting. Like I've always said, if in this space we stop experimenting, then we're not gonna succeed. We need to run these experiments, and I think that because things are on chain, as you said, it's a very public experiment. But because of that, we're also able to hold ourselves accountable in a very public way. Agreed. I would say when I started using Hypersub, it was not the easiest experience. Even though I feel like, to be fair, Johnny has gone out of his way as a founder, as a developer, to put out as much, or not as much, but he's put out quite a bit of content on how to use the product, on kind of different strategies that you can use with the product. And then obviously all of these other subscriptions are publicly viewable. So what I did is I spent a day just kind of going through all of the different subscriptions on the platform and just kind of documenting what their distribution strategy was in terms of like what the cost was to subscribe, what the perks and rewards were to be a subscriber, what some of the language that they're using when they're describing their subscription, in terms of how they're leveraging this for building community. Those are some of the things that I really was quite methodical about, because yeah, I had never really seen anything like this before in terms of a platform where you could, it felt like a very down funnel product where you can go from just getting attention, or going beyond just getting attention, going beyond just pure monetization or point of sale, to where you can actually build community with NFTs. And so I was like, oh, this is really interesting. Obviously, some parallels here with Patreon, but it's with crypto, and there's crypto native rewards. Like, that's really cool. Like, what else can we do with this? And so, like I said, I spent quite a bit of time, and I also did fudge it up a few times where I was like, oh, did I price that right? Or did I mean that was the price for the annual subscription and not what it should be per month? Because wow, that's expensive. And so I did make a couple of edits and adjustments, and I still am. Like, when it comes to how we describe our community, like, I feel like we've kind of almost outgrown what we talk about there too, because we've proven over the course of like 3 months how we use our Hypersub, how we bring community together, what are some of the perks and rewards to being a Crypto Sapiens member. I wonder if like you have any examples there too, in terms of like how you've learned over time using Hypersub, and how you maybe even adapted, or maybe new channels that you've started, how you've introduced people to Hypersub there too.
Yeah, so for my art channel, I think for my art Hypersub, the one thing I was not expecting but has turned out to be really amazing was the group gated chat that Warpcast enables based on that Hypersub, because it is an NFT, and that for me has been the most exciting and the most rewarding, because I've gotten to know people on a very different level, and I think it's helped. And I kind of tell people this on Power Hour sometimes, like, if you want to come on and do well on this platform, you have to have like a cobble or a group of people behind you willing to support you. And one of the easiest ways to hack that is joining Hypersubs that have gated chats, because you're instantly connected to a group of people and you have something to talk about, right? Like, you have something in common instantaneously. You can read back on the chat, see what's going on, and jump in pretty quickly. And if people like what you say, they'll just start following you organically, or they'll say, oh, this person's in Hypersub with me, let me follow them, et cetera, et cetera. And it makes it where you can get plugged in really, really easily. And there's enough Hypersubs now. Like, there's one for meditation, there's people doing yoga, like whatever topic you can imagine, someone's probably doing it, or there's a white space there to do it, right? Like, you can get really creative with how it's used and kind of create community, even if that wasn't your intention. So it was not my intention at all with my arts Hypersub, but it's been the best part of it, hands down. With my channel Hypersub, I don't have a gated chat on purpose, because it's just way too many people. And in all my chats that have more than 100 people are just overwhelming, and it's really hard to find yourself in a sea of that many people. So I don't think it scales for maybe every channel, but the channel side, my anime manga subscription it's really inexpensive. It's like less than $1. And the only reason I even thought to do this was because someone posted, like, wouldn't it be amazing if you could create a Hypersub to gate a channel, use rounds to reward the community, and, do all this crazy stuff all automatically in this flywheel using all these Farcaster native products. And I wanted to take on that challenge. I learned it's a little harder with rounds because it doesn't natively pick up NFTs as the curators yet. It's coming. I haven't checked like this week to see if it's there yet, but you have to add them by uh, Farcaster IDs or FIDs, and that's just a little out of my skill set. Like I'm tech savvy, but not enough to like go into the Nanar API and pull all the FIDs that are subscribed to my Hypersub and run a script to change it every day and add it to rounds. Like I can't do that. I need that automated for me. But once that's there, that's really enticing as a channel creator to think that you could let your community kind of self police and promote the content they want to promote with their likes and with their votes by saying, you know, this is great content. I think this should be rewarded, and start putting that community wallet, even if it's a small amount of money, into people's hands and say, hey, you could be rewarded. So right now I manually tip, and I'm very lucky that I was early into many of the tipping systems and I'm able to do that. I understand not everybody can, but it's been a fun experiment because the channel is crushing it. It's doing really, really well. It's very, very active. In fact, I spend a couple of hours a day just going through and reading all the posts because I'll wake up to 50 or 60 posts. And this is a channel that 2 months ago had 2 or 3 posts a day. So I really thought I was going to kill it by saying, you got to pay to post here. But it's like, no, you gotta pay to post because I want amazing content. I want thoughtful content, and I will reward you for it because it also makes my life easier. Like I'm never going to run out of anime and manga to watch and read because I get personalized, you know, highly curated recommendations here every day by hundreds of people around the world who are passionate about it. And we've gotten a lot of power badges out of it and created a fun little community. And that was not really the intention, but I wondered, like, what would happen if, you know, people were incentivized to scroll the channel every day and to post every day? You know, could we help lift up a whole community? And I think the answer is yes. And I'm excited about the power of channels and the way that we can use some of these tools to kind of layer onto each other, to play off of each other, and to think like Moxie's coming next, how that's going to change the game. Like it's starting to get excited, right? Where people could really get paid and rewarded for their content. And to me, that's the most exciting. Like have Reddit, but get paid for it. And that's compelling. And I can suddenly tell all my friends, like, leave Reddit. Like, don't go there. Don't give away your ideas and your thought capital for free. Post it where people value it and where they're going to reward you.
Oh my God, I'm like so excited to hear with what you're saying because like we're on the same wavelength, right? Like I wouldn't say I was a Reddit power user, but I've definitely subscribed. I've been on there for quite a bit. Love using it for certain conversations. Of when I detoxed from social media, and I've done that a few times. Reddit is probably one of the few that I've kept because I feel like it doesn't have that same formula for basically keeping you stuck on the app, right? It is very it's very educational. It can be, I suppose. The way that the feed or the algorithm works, it's not about keeping you on the app for hours at a time. At least I haven't found it to be that case. And I can find communities that I resonate with, which is very different. I can't say the same thing for Instagram, maybe YouTube, definitely not, you know, on TikTok or anything like that. So I really enjoy using Reddit for that, for like connecting and finding my tribe, if you will, and then getting like alpha knowledge from those communities, from those topics that are interesting to me. But there's still a limitation, right? And I think you just described it perfectly in terms of like all the things that are available to us as creators, as channel owners on Farcaster using channels, but also on the consumer side. When it comes to, you know, finding your tribe and looking and exploring conversations and contributing to those conversations, ways that you can monetize the value that you create, I think that that's really great. And I wonder, maybe you can tell me a little bit about this, because you were starting to talk about rounds, right? And before I get finish this thought, I was just on a call with a good friend of mine. She's in the audience. Diana, she's the host of Rehash, and we were just jamming on you know, just the creator stack of that's being built around Farcaster, and we talked about rounds. I think you're one of the best people to kind of learn from when it comes to rounds, because I think you've been consistently using rounds, rewarding people, creating different campaigns. I tried it. And in fact, I kind of gave my honest take about this to Diana earlier too, which is I don't think I used it right. I didn't really understand that all the funds that I was locking in to rounds were going to be distributed regardless of the value that people were creating in the channel. But as long as they fell within the parameters, right, of like what I asked for, I wasn't not going to vote for their contributions. It was more on my end in terms of the design of the rounds, less so on their contributions to the rounds. So I wonder, maybe you can talk a little bit about rounds and kind of what you've learned there and what your thought is about like rounds design when it comes to getting people to create and contribute to your channels, but also earn from your channels.
Yeah, so I think this goes back to like, if you want to be really successful on Farcaster, I think you have to lean in pretty hard and actually put some money in. And I think the best thing you can do is to spend the $25 to get your 2,500 warps and create a channel so that you can play with this stuff and experience it yourself. Because the more you understand channels and the moderation tools available and the other products you can stack on top, I think once you have that baseline knowledge, you can then use it to do really well. So for instance, I tell people in my Hypersub, like, go to Rounds.wtf every day and see what channels are having rounds and if you can contribute to them, because it's literally free money for your content. And some of them are super easy, like post a photo. Some of them are way more complicated, like write a, piece on Paragraph and get lots of views on it, right? But there's a whole spectrum of like easy to hard, but it lets you see if a channel has a round going on, they want you to post there. Like this is the biggest signal that they're trying to grow this channel and they want your participation, versus posting in a channel that's moderated by maybe one person. The feed is really stale because they haven't logged in for a few weeks. Like, you could be screaming into the void, or you can be actively participating. And unless you have a channel and start playing with all these features, it's really hard to look at Farcaster as a whole and say, where should I cast? Because a lot of people just cast in the wrong places. And I think owning a channel opens this up. So for rounds, I also messed up the first time I did this. The biggest round I've run so far was for Tokyo DAO for our logo contest. And I lost you talking back to me.
Oh, no. Sorry, that wasn't for you. There's a lot happening. Just so for everybody knows, there's a lot happening in my home. There's cleaning happening. My family's off for the summer. So when I'm muted, I'm giving instructions outside.
No worries. I was like, oh no, he's talking to me and I can't hear him. My headphones have disconnected. Okay, so sorry. So the rounds for Tokyo DAO for our logo contest. So again, I came up with this great idea that we were going to have this contest and we were going to let the DAO vote on it. And I did not realize that I could not just put in the DAO NFT, which is our Tokyo passport, and let everybody vote. I had to do it by Farcaster IDs. So luckily, I'm good friends with several devs, and Deployer hooked me up, and he's like, if you have the NFT, just tell me and I'll pull all the FIDs that have that NFT and send it to you. Like, he was really, really kind, but otherwise it would have been a really heavy lift to pull 340 FIDs as voters on rounds, because it works for ERC20 tokens right now, but I'm pretty sure our NFT is a ERC 721. And they said that's coming soon, but it wasn't ready for the logo contest. So we kind of had to have a cutoff, like a snapshot. Here's who can vote. Here's who can do this. And when you set it up, you can set up moderators of the round. And so I set myself as the moderator, but I didn't realize, again, this is user error, that it didn't exclude me from the round. So at the end of the round, since I did the initial post and said, please use this hashtag, please do this stuff, and everyone shared that, I ended up getting the biggest portion of the pot and had to claim it and throw it back at the DAO. And that wasn't my intention, right? So I just ended up tipping the winner a little bit extra, because I was like, you should have gotten more in the rounds and things like that. But it was really just to reward people for participating. And I think everybody enjoyed it. And again, it wasn't that much money. It might have been like $50 or something in Japan tokens, but it was kind of the thought that counts, right? And getting it set up and telling people like, we appreciate that you're taking the time to do this. And we just want to say thank you. And we wanted to let the community have a voice. And it ended up that we just got overwhelmed with the responses. We had no idea there were so many. I mean, I knew there were a lot of creative, amazing people here, but they kind of came out the woodwork and we got hundreds of submissions for our logos. And so we had to kind of use the rounds to get like a top 25 and then call that down to like a top 10 for the full DAO vote. So it was a good experience and I definitely want to use it again. But I would say right now, rounds is kind of 80% there. And they just need a couple more pop-ups like, hey, you're the moderator, you have to remove yourself. Like if you don't want to be counted in this, you have to manually exclude yourself. I just made a bad assumption. And once that's automated by any token can become the curator, I think that's going to be the biggest unlock we're going to have next, because then any Hypersub, any NFT collection can make it where anybody can vote. And you don't even need to, I don't think you have to own a channel to do a round. And like now you can just create one and just stick money on top of someone else's, channel or space or things like that. And I'm like, I would not be offended if someone wanted to give away money in my channel, right? So I feel like there's a lot of cool unlocks where you can reward specific communities, like the same way Enjoy was giving bonuses if you were a member of a certain, I was about to say subreddit, but if you were a member of a certain channel or a member of a certain community or owned a certain NFT or tried a new product, like this is where the collaboration is going to start to get really exciting. And I've already had people ask, hey, would you want to do like a discount or something if people subscribe to both of our Hypersubs? And I honestly haven't thought that far ahead. Or how can we share, channel stuff? Could we do it where it's like a buy one, get one free? You can subscribe to both channels. And that's starting to get really compelling as people grow that, maybe you don't even have to be so siloed. We can't cross post right now, but maybe you could encourage people to post in a new community or help a new community grow because they can add your Hypersub to their auto mod or not a bot rules. Like that's where it's starting to get fun, that you could actually collaborate, even if it's a temporary campaign, right? To like help a new channel grow and help promote people. And especially when people are struggling to get their power badges, like there could be channels that are very friendly to new people where you can subscribe for 75 cents or $1 and guarantee to be on the main page. And now you might even get rewarded for that content. Like this is how we bring new people in and get them excited about Farcaster, because it's like we value who you are and what you have to contribute. It's just that you might have to find those channels that are really friendly or those tribes who are looking to support and grow people. But I think we're starting to see artist collectives pop up and more people bringing over their followings from Twitter and more people who are really seriously thinking about what does a channel look like in 2 to 5 years? What could that growth be? And starting to put the investment in now to say, you know what, I'm going to think like, what if this isn't just 1,000 people? What if it's 1 million? What could this look like? And, having a Hypersub for 75 cents to $1 a month is not going to get you rich right now. But if there's 1 million people in your channel in 5 years, and now you have a wallet with, 750,000 a month to start rewarding your community via automated rounds, like why would anybody spend time on Reddit when they could come post that content here and, potentially be rewarded every month for providing valuable insight, commentary, replies, etc. Like you're starting to really become a force of nature and get people off of Web 2 and onto Web 3.
Yeah. I mean, so you touched on a lot of things there. One of them, which I think is really interesting to consider, is the permissionless nature of channels, or at least the way that you can compose on top of these channels. You talked about how through these different platforms, you can now create incentives, even to channels that aren't your own. I know there's another product that I use that recently announced something similar, and that's Stack. So I don't know if you're familiar or if you're using it, but for me, Stack has been kind of a huge unlock for hacking channel growth, but also for creating incentives that are a bit more comprehensive than just around one specific kind of action, right? So I use a variety of products to incentivize different actions, all of which hopefully are providing some sort of like positive sum result, both for the consumer, but also for the creator. Stack, though, is interesting in that I'm able to create a point system that um, basically has a value for different actions. So whether you're following us, following our account on Farcaster, our brand account, following the channel, contributing to that channel, minting our content, subscribe to our Hypersub, all of these things have different point values. And then I create one point system from that where, you have, instead of like 1 point, 2 points, you have like 300 points. And all of this is aggregated based on your kind of, I guess, use or contributions to our ecosystem. And what I've been able to do with Stack before is I've been able to create then these retroactive airdrops. And similar to you, I was early to a lot of these communities. So I have in our treasury, different tokens. And by the way, when I say early, like there's still a lot of new scene coins being launched today, and you can still be early. So, just because I was early to degen doesn't mean you can't be early to another, kind of scene coin that's being launched today. And then working with those communities to basically create token rewards for your community. But yeah, I used Stack to create these retroactive rewards for people who were contributing to our ecosystem in different ways. Now, from what I understand, because I haven't done this yet, I could actually use Stack to create retroactive rewards for other point systems created by other communities. So I could go to, for example, who else is using it? I think UFO Club is using it. I believe also Adam with Mint Podcast is using it. I could say, hey, look, I want to create some sort of like retroactive reward to their community. And let's imagine that I have my own token, aka Moxie. We can get into that too. I could now share my token with those community members based on actions that I consider to be positive and valuable, to then onboard them to my community, right? Like you can call that a vampire attack if you will, because I think historically that's the way that has been perceived. But it goes beyond that, right? It's now about creating these like composable communities. And all of that is only available because both of the on-chain data that's openly readable, right? But also because of these platforms choosing to, interoperate and not kind of just look at the way that one community or one product, kind of works. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on point systems. Are you using Stack? If you're not using Stack, how are you thinking about like leveraging Moxie? Because I know you talked about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm not using Stack, but I'm actually really excited because we just had this question come up 2 nights ago on our Tokyo DAO call about how can we do our own leaderboards. We were talking about how, Ham has one, but Deployer codes that, on his own, and it's not really a plug and play product. And we talked about Success has one, but they created it on their own as well. And you can pull some metrics from like CastSense and Farcaster Studio and even AutoMod now on the back end. It shows you who are your, top community members by contribution and things. And Airstack is starting to show that because of Moxie, like who are kind of the lead people in your channels. So right now there's a bunch of disparate data, but I'm excited to see that come together and to know that there's now a plug and play product that I can just put in and not have to code it myself, right? Because again, I'm tech savvy, but I'm no dev. So I will play with your stuff and break it, but I definitely can't code my own leaderboard. And that's really exciting, right? Because I feel like if you can start weighing things, because maybe I think some of these products suffer from, and I think what Moxie's trying to fix is like, there's a difference between casting to one channel 100 times a day and casting one thing that's like really amazing, right? And so you don't want it to go just by quantity. You want to also have some quality in there, but you want to be careful that it's not too far weighted where a new person who's trying to get started and doesn't have a big following, maybe they're not appearing in people's home feeds versus somebody who has a very large following is. So it's definitely this double-edged sword to really get this stuff right, to say, how do you measure contribution to a community and make everybody equal? And I think that's still like just a Farcaster issue, because older accounts are so heavily weighted in the algorithm, and we all see it, right? You can see the trending feed, you can see who comes up consistently. It's very clear in Airstack, which is becoming Moxie. Like, the more connected your accounts are to the original top, 1,000 accounts that first started on the platform, the better your social capital score is. And I understand you have to have a seeded trust network, and Open Rank is very similar, but I think that's going to be a huge shock for a lot of people when they start to use Moxie and recognize that it really depends on who interacts with you. Like I think Jason said many times, like your social score doesn't really matter. It's about who interacts with you. But the flip side of that is it does matter, because if you're trying to build up a community and you're trying to reward your community, if your Airstack score is very low, your likes, don't translate to Moxie for them. But if you hang out in base builds and post every week, you'll notice that your Moxie score goes crazy if Jesse Pollock likes your post, because he's the number 2 person on the Airstack list. So if he likes it, you're going to get a lot of Moxie. And if he doesn't, you could have 1,000 people like your post, but if they're not in the top 100, it's not going to translate to compensation, right? So this is where I think things are going to get weird for a couple of months as people realize how the system works, but the double-edged sword of it and kind of the dark side of it, that it's really about attention from 300 or 400 accounts that are going to make money, and how that's going to work for channels, right? So it's exciting to realize that channels could be positioned really well here, where the channel itself can become a powerhouse, and it doesn't matter if the channel has 100,000 people. It could be a small community that's very highly engaged and very supportive of each other, and that can earn a lot of Moxie. And you don't have to have Jesse hanging out in your channel for it to do well. You just have to have 100 really dedicated people, right? Like your 100 true fans. So that's where I get excited about Moxie. I don't think it's perfect. I don't think any of these algorithms are, but it's a pretty good proxy for what the network values. And I think people should be paying attention to it as they're trying to grow on Farcaster, because the Warpcast algorithm is probably not that far off from a mix of Open Rank and Airstack. Like I assume their algorithms, it's black box, of course, but it's probably 50% of each of those is a pretty good indication of where you are in the Warpcast algorithm, and that's going to be how your engagement goes. And I think once people can really put these into perspective, it'll help them understand like the challenges of growing your account and doing well, that sometimes you can cast amazing stuff, but if nobody sees it, it really doesn't matter. So you have to really figure out where to cast, where to get visibility, how to tag people correctly and bring them into conversations. I think a lot of that's just still lacking, because people are trying to figure out, is it a social network? Is it social media? Is it back and forth engagement? Is it just broadcast? And I think a lot of times people look at big accounts and mirror that behavior, but they don't realize new accounts can't do the same things. Like what worked 6 or 7 months ago doesn't work anymore. And you have to have a new strategy if you want to do well here.
No, that's all really, really great information. I think about like what you've said right now, and I'm just kind of also thinking about some of the things that recently made the news. Excuse me. It was, what's his name? Mark Wahlberg? Not Mark. Mark Zuckerman. Oh my God, why can't I remember his name? What the hell's the Facebook founder's name?
Mark Zuckerberg. You were close. Like there was
Wow.
a Berg, there was a Mark. You were in there.
Yeah. I mean, look, from now on, I'm just going to say Mark Wahlberg is the founder of Facebook for sure. For some reason, I can think of his name faster. Anyways, he recently shared a post as recently as yesterday, where he was talking about AI and the different type of what is it that I'm trying to say here? The different models, I guess AI models, and how we can kind of ensure the security and success and, just for the benefit of all and humanity overall, the relationship between AI and humanity. And he talked about these models needing to be open, public. And I only bring this up because I think that in a very, very small way, we're starting to see in the Farcaster ecosystem, all these products being developed, all of these different challenges that creators are having to take on to build really valuable experiences for their audience, their community. And the only way forward that I see, at least for me, this is from personal experience, and maybe Pichi, you might agree, is for those who are coming behind us, for those who are probably struggling more, especially when you talk about power badges, we can definitely dive into that. We need to be able to openly or in public share not just our experience, but also how we're winning, how we're succeeding, the recipe to success. Because I feel like there are folks who either were not early, and because of that, they're being penalized by the system, or just weren't as active for some reason, or maybe just weren't as knowledgeable about the different tools that are being developed. So I feel like, for me at least, there's a responsibility to share the knowledge, share the recipe to success, whatever that looks like. I think it's different for everyone too, based on what your strategy and your targets and your goals are. But doing so openly so that we can win, so that we can succeed together. Especially as you said, like there's these, beyond just what we've already discussed, which has been around for some time. Like Hypersub has been around for some time. Rounds, not as long, but still been around for some time. Channels for sure. Now there's these new tools also that are coming into play, right? Like Stack, even though they've been around for over a month, they're now not as new or novel as maybe something like Moxie. So I feel like this space here for me is a space that you and I can kind of even talk through some of the challenges that we're having as we're exploring these new platforms, but also a resource for those who are coming in behind us or have maybe more questions because they're not as knowledgeable or don't have the same resources that you and I might have, so that they can also learn through their journey, their creator journey here in this space. I wonder if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of funny because it's really hard to like shift your perspective, right? And I think there's definitely a group of people who were on Farcaster very, very early. They remember, they tell me stories. It's been fascinating to hear of like what it used to be and how small it was and how connected everyone was. And people met up in real life and went to each other's birthday parties and know each other. Like it's a whole different thing than when you have, almost 800,000 accounts on the platform now, right? They've gone through unprecedented growth and it's changed things a lot. And tipping has also changed things a lot. And some people see it as change for the better. Some people see it as change for the worse. But Farcaster from a year ago and Farcaster today are very different places. And I see a lot of times I'll see chat of like, I don't know why people are grumbling about power badges. And that's really easy to say if you've had one since day one, and very difficult for somebody who's never had one. They're having very, very different experiences on the platform. So when I joined 6 months ago, I thought Farcaster was magic because when I used a new product like Paragraph, I was a first-time user. I was actually writing about ham. And since their emoji is how you tip, Paragraph does not display emojis inside of their frames because, it's a tool for serious writers. So why would you be writing about emojis, right? But if you're writing about a system that uses emojis as tipping, it's actually pretty important. So I tagged Paragraph and said, hey, can you guys help me? I don't know how to make this display. And also I was updating my articles because I was writing them more like Wikipedia articles than just kind of a one piece in time. And the frames weren't updating when I made changes to the text because most people don't do that. They write an article, that's the end. They write another article next week. They don't edit the same one. And I was so lucky that Colin, who was, in charge of Paragraph, wrote back to me and said, okay, you're doing something weird. We acknowledge we didn't build it that way, but you make a really excellent point that if somebody publishes their frame and it looks weird and they want to go make changes, we should be updating the frame. So we're going to fix that. So I had this magical moment where the founder of a product took my feedback, helped me, and, we worked together to make small improvements. And emojis still don't work, but I get it. That's a very niche use case. I just have to deal with it and put some pictures in if I want it to display correctly. But like, they're super open to feedback. They're very, responsive. It was great. But when Power Badges came into place, someone else who joined 3 months ago might have also tagged Paragraph, but Paragraph would never see that tag because the spammers started tagging everybody thinking they were going to get magic open rank points because something came out where it said you got 12 open rank points for a tag. So the spammers all started tagging us and summarizing what we said and adding our names back in, thinking that was going to help their open rank position. It doesn't, FYI. That's not what they mean. They mean if someone tags you and you respond, that's when you get the points, right? Like that's clearly a good engagement. You brought somebody into a conversation, they continue to engage. Open Rank likes that. Just tagging people randomly doesn't help. But what happens for founders is they don't get to see that user feedback because that person didn't have a power badge and they were kind of invisible. So that person joins, asks for help, gets ignored, and moves on to the next thing and says, well, I'll just go back to Substack or Medium. Like, why even bother with this product, right? And I'm sure as a founder, I'm sure the Paragraph team is like, what? What do you mean we're not seeing people asking for help? Like, we have our settings changed. We did everything we could. We're not getting tagged. But since those accounts are not, quote, high value on Warpcast, they're just not visible. And that's a very different experience than I had. Like, I thought this place was magic. I have one-on-one access to founders. I can talk to them about their products. This is fantastic. 3 months later, you can't have that same experience. Now, priority mode is off for everyone since the spam problem has been addressed, I think, a lot by the team, and they're really trying their best. And if people with spam labels tag you, you don't get a notification. But if someone without a power badge tags you and they're not labeled as spam, you will get that in your mentions tab. So I think that's a good step forward because now I think whereas 3 months ago you were lost in the noise, if you come on today and you try to tag the Paragraph team for help, there's a good chance they're going to see it. But 3 months ago, they would not have seen it at all unless they had priority mode turned off, notifications on for everyone. Like, you had to change several settings in Warpcast to really make sure you were seeing everything. So I think that's where, good intentions sometimes, but the consequences are, if I was a founder and like as a creator, I felt terrible when people would tag me in art they made and asking for feedback, or sometimes they even redrew my PFP in their own style and just thought I ignored them. And it wasn't until someone with a power badge tagged me and said, hey, Pichi, have you seen this cool art? It's really great. And I'm like, what? I check my notifications constantly. I definitely did not see that. And that's when I realized, like, there's more at play to the algorithm than we're all aware, right? And like, some things are getting surfaced and some things aren't. And I think that's the challenge for new people is like, you have to kind of understand a lot of this. And I don't think you have that lift with Reddit or Facebook or Instagram or TikTok. But because this platform really focuses on engagement and it wants to make sure that the engagement is authentic, it's really taking a wide sweep at trying to cut back on stuff it doesn't think is legitimate. And I think probably 25% of real people are getting caught in that net unintentionally, and it still needs to be worked on, but it makes it a challenge for them to have a wonderful experience like I had when I first joined. And I've been very lucky and privileged that I've been able to continue to have that experience because I got a power badge the first day they came out and I've never lost it. But I have a lot of friends that get one week, lose it the next week, and they have a very different experience when they have their power badge versus when they don't. And to me, that's like soul crushing, right? Because if artists or builders come here for the first time, post and ask for help and don't get seen, that's a challenge, right? But like, separating them out from these chat bots that just auto respond to everything is rough. And I don't expect the team to be able to figure that out overnight and fix it in a week.
Yeah. No, I think that you bring up really good points. I mean, I think for anybody who's listening, who's maybe struggling with power badges and visibility, as a creator, this is something, by the way, that you made me aware of. So I want to thank you both for letting me know, but also sharing this publicly here too. I turned off my priority mode, and I think it increased the visibility of conversations that I was otherwise missing. Sure, I'm more prone to seeing spam, but I'm also not offended, when I see that spam. Two is I'm also using other platforms, other clients to Farcaster, which increase the user experience for myself too, both as a consumer and a creator. And I want to shout out Supercast because I think Supercast does a really good job at kind of keeping a very open feed. And sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, like how much am I missing from my Farcaster experience by using Warpcast? Like obviously Warpcast is very biased, is very opinionated. I think every client is, because every client has its own kind of developer kind of ethos, I suppose, and will be built in a way that they see as ideal for the Farcaster protocol. But using Supercast, I've been able to do a lot more on Farcaster. Sure, it doesn't have all the options that Warpcast does, but it has enough differentiation where I do open it several times a week, and I do use it for different use cases, like scheduling posts, for instance, which I can't do on Warpcast. So, and again, just to also kind of reiterate, I'm able to see other comments that I would otherwise be missing on Warpcast because they get hidden, because they're not necessarily using the same spam filtering that is being used on Warpcast. So, if you're out there and you're listening, and you're like, oh, like, what am I missing? Sign up to Supercast. I believe it's like $100 a year. For me, that was not a big amount, but I know for others that might be an issue. If that is an issue, turn off priority mode, and then you'll immediately see a difference in the type of people or the comments that are coming through. And you might be surprised. There might be some conversations that you've been missing this whole time. I think we touched on a lot, Pichi. I mean, especially for the first one, there's a lot that I still want to talk about, obviously. And I'm excited that this is, something that we can do on a regular basis. Anything you want to say before we sign out?
Yeah, I was just going to say some alternative. Supercast is definitely awesome, but some that are free. You could try Jam, which is very visually oriented. In fact, when you post from Jam, it wants you to post like a picture or a video. Like they're definitely trying to have that Instagram feel. And a lot of their feeds are visual. So if you're just looking for like new art or you want to watch videos, like try Jam. Wildcard is another one. I think they're wildcard.lol. They have their own tipping system. It's a iPhone PWA, but it's really cool because they have their own direct messages. So you can actually, if you have a Hypersub or a Farcard or any sort of NFT, you can actually spin up a gated group chat inside of Wildcard, which I didn't think any clients were anywhere close to having direct cast, but they figured it out. So it's a pretty cool experience because their feed lets you sort by, specific channels or global or trending or most tipped. So you can see the most tipped cast from a bunch of different tipping mechanisms. Like I think right now it's Wild and Degen and Dugen maybe and a couple others. So it's just another way to kind of sort and see what you're missing out on. Because again, if you only use Warpcast, you're probably just seeing 5 to 10% of the content. There's a lot more out there. So if you're trying to do discovery, I would definitely say install a few of these other apps. HeroCast is another one. There's just several, and Noun Space is another one that you can customize. So definitely explore at least one alternative client just so you can see what you're missing, because it might change your whole Farcaster experience. You might find a bunch of people you never would have come across organically, and some of them have really cool searches like Buoy. I wouldn't use Buoy as a client per se, but as a search engine, it's fantastic. And it lets you stock keywords or stock mentions when people might not have tagged you, but are still talking about you. And that's just another really good way to see what else is happening in Farcaster land.
Well, there you have it. We touched on so much today. I think if I were to to try to recap today, we definitely try to talk about the incentive mechanisms available to us as creators for our community, for community building. And then we started to touch on some of the clients and maybe some of the issues with Warpcast, but some of the opportunities also available in the client space for Farcaster and some of the different, clients you can use to kind of have a different user experience and to better engage with your community as well. I don't know what the hell we're going to talk about next week, but I think that this is going to be equally fun. I had such a fun time talking to you today, Pichi. Honestly, I appreciate you being open to this. We'll try to find what our cadence is going to be like here, but certainly I'd love it to be weekly, but we're going to try to find the right day and time to make sure that it works for both of us and for our audience. If you have a preference, let us know, drop it in the channel. On Lonely, we didn't even get to jam too much on it, but one of the things I'm really excited about, you can subscribe to this channel now too. So I'll make sure if you're following me, if you're following Pichi, we'll drop the Cryptosapiens channel as a cast, and then make sure you subscribe because we'll be here weekly, not just for this series, but I mean, we leverage, as Cryptosapiens, we leverage Unlonely a lot for, hosting conversations, but also engaging directly with the audience that's listening to it. So I want to thank Grace, of course, for being in the audience and for being so generous with your time as well, and supporting us whenever we have questions and how to better utilize Unlonely. Without further ado, thank you, everybody. We'll see you again next week.
Thanks all. Have a great week.